Boker Tov, good morning. Today's Daf Yomi is Yevamos Kuf Tes, Yevamos 109. And we're going to start on the very last line of the Mishnah on Kuf Ches Amabeis. And the Mishnah tells us, Hamagarish es Aisha. So somebody who divorces their wife, Vihichzira, and then he remarries her, Muteres Yavim. She's going to be allowed to do Yibam. We're going to say that even though she had fallen to Yibam, even though she had been divorced from her husband. And at that moment when she's divorced, she's prohibited to her brother-in-law forever because she was divorced from her husband, and therefore she's not allowed to marry his brother. Nevertheless, since he remarried her, and then he died without children, she falls to Yibam from that moment. On top of Kuf Testament Aleph, the Rebbe Eliezer Omer, Rebbe Eliezer Oser, Rebbe Eliezer is two different girsas. We'll go with Rebbe Eliezer. He prohibits it. So actually, the most of the manuscripts say it's Rebbe Eliezer, so we'll go with Rebbe Eliezer. Rebbe Eliezer prohibits her to do Yibam in that circumstance. We'll see in the Gemara it says that she will do chalitza. He requires, but Yibam is prohibited. So too, somebody divorces a minor girl. So in this case, they weren't. So in this case, he divorces a minor girl who was not biblically married, Zira, and then he remarries her, Muteras Yabam. She's also going to be allowed to do Yabam. But we're going to see that there's a distinction between this case and another case, where it's Rebbe Eliezer Oser. Rebbe Eliezer prohibits in that case. However, and this is the contrast with the previous case, but if it was a katana, she'sia avia, but if it was a girl whose father married her off ayi, so she's biblically married, Garsha, and then she became divorced from her husband. So now she's biblically divorced. And now if she gets remarried by the mother, that's kiyasoma b'chayav. So then she's like an orphan while her father is still alive, and therefore her father loses the right to biblically remarry her again. And so now that he remarries her, he's only rabbinically married. So biblically she's divorced and prohibited to her husband's brother. But then rabbinically she's remarried. So divrei hakol asur l'yavim. Everybody says that since she was biblically prohibited to him, the rabbinic marriage does not override the biblical prohibition, and therefore she's prohibited to do yibum under those cases, under that case. So Amar Eifa, so Eifa taught my time of the Rebbe Eliezer. What's the reasoning why Rebbe Eliezer prohibits her to do yibum under these circumstances? So the Gemara explains, the reason is because since at the moment she had married, then she got divorced. At that moment where she was divorced, she was prohibited to her husband's brother. So therefore, since at that moment she was prohibited, we say she can never go back and do yibum again. So Rabbanan say back to him, what if you say since she's prohibited to her husband's brother, she remains always prohibited, then she shouldn't also require chalitza. If you want to say, well, okay, fine, she doesn't need chalitza either. No, we don't say that. That they taught, Rabbi Eliezer says she does do chalitza. So Eifa taught Rabbi Eliezer, well, you're done on my time. Eifa taught, I don't know the explanation for Rabbi Eliezer. It's very unusual to see an Amora saying this lashon about a Tana. So maybe similar lashon in Erev and Daf Gimel, but seems to be like one of the few rare times in Shas. So he says, I don't know the explanation for Rebbe Eliezer. The Gemara is going to give several suggestions to explain the concept of why Rebbe Eliezer prohibits yibum under this case. Amar Abaye Hainu Taimad Rebbe Eliezer Mesafko Imisam Apelas. He says Rebbe Eliezer was uncertain whether Misa, at what moment does the woman fall to Yibam? Is it from the moment of death, and in which case she would fall to Yibam, or does she fall to Yibam from the moment of the first marriage? And so therefore, if she falls to Yibam from the moment of death of her husband, then she falls to Yibum before her husband's brother. But Ini Suna Rishonim Apilim, but if she falls to Yibum from the moment of the first marriage, and then she's just waiting for the husband to die, but she's already kind of having a zika to her husband's brother, well, then she became prohibited from the moment of the divorce. It's Abaye's explanation. Rav Amar Oam Pshito Rabbi Eliezer the Misa Mapel. So he says no, she falls to Yibum from the moment of death, and so therefore she should really have to do Yibum with her husband's brother. So he says, but everybody is an expert in Gerushin. It's a decree. Everybody knows that she's divorced, but not everybody knows that he remarried her, and so therefore we're concerned that people are going to think that she's doing Yibum after she was divorced, and she's a divorcee doing Yibum. So the Gemara says, Adarabba, that's just the opposite. Chazara, given the Yasra Tute, is like just the opposite. If he remarries her, everybody's going to know that he remarried her. And so since he remarried her, he's going to be Yasra Tute, she's going to be living with him, everybody's going to know. There's going to be a big hawk about that. Gemara says, no, no, it's possible that he married her at night, and then in the morning, he died right away. So word didn't get out that he remarried her. And so therefore, for this reason, we're going to say that we're not going to allow the Yibum. So the Gemara says, I don't require the Chalitza. Rav Ashi gives another explanation. There's now a third explanation. Rav Ashi says, or Eifa says, I don't know. He attempted, so this is really the fourth attempt. Rav Ashi says, I know time to Rabbi Eliezer de Gazer Hani Mishum Yisoma B'Chaya Av V'Echzira. So we're going to make this decree because we had said in our Mishnah, everybody says that if she had been divorced, if she had been married off by her father, which is a biblical marriage, and then she got divorced, then it's only a rabbinic remarriage. So everybody would say that under that case, Yibum is not allowed. So therefore, we're going to make a decree about the case of an adult, because you might come to do it in the case of a Yisoma B'Chayav, that unusual case where the girl was married off by her father and divorced, and now everybody says you can't allow Yibum under those circumstances. Gemara says, and in fact, this approach of Rav Ashi is logical, the Ketani Seifa, because the Mishnah says, Ketana Shesia Avia, the last clause of the Mishnah says a minor girl whose father married her off, Beniskarsha, and then she became divorced, Kisoma B'Chayav V'Echzira. So then she's like, a Yisoma B'Chayav, meaning to say that if the father marries her off, it's not a biblical marriage anymore, and then he remarries her, Dibri Akol Shasur Yabam. Everybody would say that she's prohibited to Yibam. Gemara says, Hi Milo Memer, but why is this case even needed? Pshita, isn't it obvious that her divorce was biblically, so she can't marry her husband's brother, and of course the rabbis can't override a biblical law. So therefore, isn't it teaching us this very idea that the time of the Rabbi Eliezer, that the whole reason why Rabbi Eliezer prohibits it is because of this gezerah. The whole reason why Rabbi Eliezer prohibits in the former cases is because he's worried about this case of Yisoma B'Chayav. So Shema Mina. And indeed, Tanya Kavasi de Rav Ashi. So we have a Bryce supports Rav Ashi, says the whole reason why Rabbi Eliezer prohibits is because we might come to do this case of Yisoma B'Chayav. So because what's the Bryce supporting Rav Ashi? It says Modim Chachamo Rabbi Eliezer. Chachamim agree with Rabbi Eliezer Bekatana Sheisia Aviyav and Iskarisha by a minor girl whose father married her off and then she was divorced, that she is like a Yisoma B'Chayav V'Echzira. So the Brisa says that Rabbi Eliezer admits in a case where the father married her off and she became divorced, she's like the Yisoma B'Chayav who was remarried. Because she was completely divorced biblically, but the remarriage is only rabbinic. And when do we say this? When he divorced her when she was a minor, and he remarried her when she was a minor. But if he divorced her as a minor, but he remarried her as an adult, in which case it's a biblical remarriage, or he divorced her, he remarried her when she was a minor, and she became an adult with him, and then under those circumstances she dies, then she could do, according to the rabbis, under those circumstances you could do chalitza or yibum, because the rabbis don't have a problem with that. Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Eliezer says you do chalitza in that case and not yibum. And so from the fact that it says, so how is this a proof for Rav Ashi's approach? So Rashi explains here from the fact that it said earlier the sages agree with Rabbi Eliezer. So we see from here, Alma Rashi says, Ari bar Rabbi Eliezer, the time of the Bacharnitza Mishumha, that it's proving to us that Rabbi Eliezer gives the explanation in the end because of this. So that's how they want to bring a proof. That's how Rashi explains it. And it's not 100% clear. The Baal Mora has a lengthy explanation about why this is a proof for Rav Ashi. But anyway, by Minei Rava mi Rav Nachman. So now Rava asks a question for Rav Nachman. Tarasa Mahu. Okay, what about, let's say Rashi says what we're talking about here is a girl you divorced and you remarried her when she was an adult. According to Rabbi Eliezer, her co-wife, what's the status of her co-wife? So biblically speaking, you can do yibum with this girl. It's just we're making a gezerah if you had remarried her when she was younger, you can't do it. So what about her co-wife? So the Gemara explains, Amrullah he gufa gezerah. The woman herself, when we remarried, is a decree. By not nekum and nigzer gezerah, you want to make a decree upon a decree and prohibit the co-wife from yibum machalitza. Matanya mishum Rabbi Eliezer amru he vitzarasa choletzes. So, but don't we have a brayso that Rabbi Eliezer says she and her co-wife do chalitza, and the Gemara says, wait, he vitzarasas salkadaitach. You mean she and her co-wife do chalitza? Can't be. We never have a situation where a woman and her co-wife do chalitza. Alav ohi otzarasa. So either she or her co-wife do the chalitza, and so we see from here that the co-wife has to do chalitza. Gemara says, no, lafti rutze kamataratsta. Aren't you already amending the text? Once you're amending the text, she would do chalitza tzarasa, but her co-wife has the ability of chaletzes or mesyabemes. Her co-wife has the ability to do chalitza or yibum. Now we come to the next Mishnah. Shnei achen nisuin l'shtei achayos. Two brothers married to two sisters who are both kitanos, who are both minor girls. Meis bawa shel achas. Man, let's say one of their husbands dies. Halazu teitze mishum achos isha. Then the other one, since the other one will be exempt from yibum chalitza, since they're both minor girls. It'll be exempt from chalitza or yibum because of being the sister of his wife. So too, if you have two deaf mute women who are, again, it's a rabbinic marriage only. Gedola katana, one's an adult and one's a minor. Meis bala shel katana. If the husband of the minor one dies, then the minor has to, if the husband of the, and the husband of the minor one dies, then the minor one, let's say you have two sisters. Excuse me, I was reading it wrong. And also the same thing applies to two charoshos, because in the case of two charoshos, it's also a rabbinic marriage, and so they're like two minor sisters. However, let's say you have a different case. Let's say you have gedola of the katana. Let's say you have an adult girl and a minor girl, and so the adult is married biblically and the minor is married rabbinically. Umeis bala shel katana, and the minor girl's husband dies, and so therefore she rabbinically falls to yibum before her husband's her brother's, her husband's brother. So under those circumstances, the minor girl for sure does not require yibum or chalitza because her husband's brother is already married to her adult sister. It's a biblical marriage, and so therefore she doesn't fall to yibum or chalitza. But let's say meis bala shel gadola. But let's say the sister who's an adult, her husband dies, and so now she biblically falls to yibum before the brother was married to the younger one. But the younger one is only rabbinically married to her husband. So now what's going to be the story? There's a woman who falls to yibum biblically, but on the other hand, she's also the sister of a woman who's rabbinically married. So what do we do in that case? So Rabbi Eliezer says, we teach the younger girl, the younger sister, to do miyun, to reject the marriage, uproot the marriage, and then the first one, and then the older one can do yibum with the husband. Whereas Rabbi Gamliel says, "Im miyana, im lav tam tagdil." He says, "Look, if she rejects the marriage, fine. Otherwise, wait until the younger one grows older. And then the older one is going to leave because she falls to yibum with a man, with a yavam of her sister, with the husband of her sister, and so therefore she can't get married." Whereas Rabbi Yeshua says, woe to him about his wife, woe to him about his brother's wife. Meaning to say, he can't remain, Mosias Isha Beget, he can't remain with his wife, and we don't allow her to do miyun, and we'll see why. And also, we don't allow him to remain married because he says that there's a zika, there's this connection to his brother's wife, and so therefore he has to divorce her. And also, the older sister, he can't do yibum. He can't do yibum with the older sister because she is the sister of his divorcee, and so therefore he can never do yibum with her, and so therefore he has to do chalitza with his brother's wife. So the Gemara says, "Umi shari, we're going to teach her to do miyun. Is that really appropriate?" Vatani bar kapara taught in a brayso, a person should always cleave to three things, and stay away from three things. What are the three things a person should cleave to? What are the three things? A person should always do chalitza. Shalom, it should try to bring priests about faras nadarim. It should try to revoke vows. The Yisrachim should separate from three things. Miyun should never do miyun. Should never allow this marriage to be rejected by the minor girl. And mina piktonos should not accept deposits. Mina arvonos, don't be a guarantor. And so the Gemara says, so why in this case is Rabbi Eliezer allowing her to do miyun? Gemara says miyun the mitzvah shani. This case is a mitzvah. It's different because otherwise she won't be able to do yibum. So therefore we want her to do miyun. Otherwise the older sister can't do miyun. Gufa. Tani bakapara. So what do you mean a person should cleave to three things, and one of them is chalitza? It says like Abba Shol. The Tanya Abba Shol Omer Hakones is Yivimto l'shem Noi l'shem Ishus l'shem Davar Achar Kilu Pogeh be'erva. Karav b'Yeina Yos of Vlad Mamzer. Now Abba Shol taught, we already had this back on Daf Gimel. Abba Shol said we don't want yibum, and somebody who does yibum, it's if you marry your brother's wife. Because she's beautiful, or because you want to be married, or for another reason, which is a euphemism. It's like you're with a relative, and he says it seems in my eyes it's close to being the offspring of mamzer. So we don't like yibum, only chalitza. Ava shalom, and a person should always cleave to bringing peace. There's a ksiv vakei shalom v'arfeu, pursue peace. Seek out peace and pursue it. On top of Kuftes and Beis, V'amar Rabbi Yavo Asir Redifa. We compare the words Redifa. It says here, Bakei Shalom V'Rayfeil V'Ksiv Hasam Rodev Tzedakah V'Chasadim Tzachayim Tzedakah V'Kavod. One who pursues tzedakah v'chesed will find a life of tzedakah v'kavod. First nadarim, you have to annul vows. Rabbi Nasan, the Tanya, Rabbi Nasan Omer Hanoder, one who annuls a vow, one who makes a vow, ki'ilu bana. If you make a vow, it's like you built a bama, which is a altar that you weren't allowed to build outside the temple. And even worse, if you uphold the vow, because that's going to encourage you to make more vows in the future. It's like you brought an offering on that bama. And a person should always distance himself from three things. What are the three things? Distance, you should never do the rejection. We shouldn't encourage the girls to reject the marriage when they're married off as a minor. Why? Maybe she's going to grow older and regret it, and then the original husband will try to convince her to get divorced from her wife, from her husband who she married after she rejected him. You should avoid deposits. Bar masa. Dami. You want to reject deposits. You shouldn't accept a deposit from somebody from a city because he's going to keep showing up at his house. And so Rashi says, what's the problem with keep showing at his house? He's going to end up taking his thing, and then he's going to forget he took his deposit back, and he's going to go back and claim it. He's going to be there so often, the business deal is going to get muddled. Minei Ravon, from a guarantor, don't be a guarantor. We're talking about Ba'arve Shaltzion, but like the guarantors of Shaltzion. Rashi, that's the name of a place. Where, what do they do in this place? They didn't go after the borrower, instead they went straight for the guarantor. So, and as Gemara is about to say, it also comes from the expression Shaltzion, from shlof dotes, meaning to say removing yourself from the borrower and just going straight for the guarantor. What do we do with the verse? What do we do with that phrase? It's very bad because he was a guarantor for a stranger. So bad after bad, terrible bad is going to come when bad after bad is going to come to those who are Mekabel Gerim, who receive converts, to the guarantors of Shaltzion, and to one who one who like nails himself to a matter of halacha. Let's go through these expressions. Mekabel Gerim. What's the problem with accepting converts? Chalbo kirebi chalbo. The Amar Rebbe Chalbo kashim Gerim Yisrael kasapachas. Converts are difficult for Israel like a scab in the skin. Meaning to say, what's the problem with the convert? So Rashi says that they don't know the details, the finer details of the commandments, and therefore the Jewish people learn from them. And there are other explanations in the other places in Shas. Tosfos once offers 4 explanations. One of them is that the converts make us look bad, make those who are born Jewish look bad because they keep the laws properly. So it's the opposite approach. So there's a lot of conflicting feelings about converts. Certainly from Rebbe Chalbo. What is from our Arave Shaltzion? What are the guarantors of Shaltzion? The Avdi Shlof Dotes, that they go straight after the guarantor, and they don't mess around even with the borrower. And what is Tokea Atzmo Dvar? What's the person who nails himself to matter of halacha? The time Rabbi Yossi Omer called Omer in Torah. Whoever says he has no Torah, in Torah, then he has no Torah. Whoever says he doesn't engage in Torah study, he's not going to receive the reward for Torah study. Omer says, well, that's obvious. Pshita, Ela Kol Omer Eno Ela Torah. Whoever says he only is going to engage in Torah study, not do the mitzvos, Eno Ela Torah. He's only going to get the reward for Torah study and not for the mitzvos. Gemara says, so that's also obvious. Somebody says, I'm only going to study Torah, he's not even going to get the reward for studying Torah if he doesn't do the mitzvahs. My time out, what's the reasoning? It says in the verse, actually, the verse is a little difficult. The verse says, "Umaratem usam ushmartem asosem." Umaratem usam, we shall teach them It should guard them to do it. Whoever is involved in the doing is also involved in the learning and gets the reward for the learning, the teaching. Whoever is not involved in doing the mitzvahs doesn't get the reward for learning and teaching it. So it says the Gemara, or maybe it's like the original approach, whoever says he's only going to engage in Torah study, he doesn't even get the reward for Torah study. And why do we need it? To come what are we talking about? A case where he teaches other people, and then after he teaches them, to come and they go out and do it. You might have thought that even though he doesn't do the mitzvah, since he taught other people how to do as I say, not as I do, therefore he gets the reward. Kamash one, he doesn't get the reward. Refers to a judge that a judgment came before him, and he learned milsa, and then he knows the law of one case and he compares it to another case, and he thinks he knows the law of Isla Rabba, and he has a teacher and in the Rebbe, and he doesn't go and ask the Rebbe what halacha is. So he's an arrogant judge. And really, it's a problem because a judge should always look at himself as though he has a sword placed between his thighs. And hell is open up from underneath him. As it states, it says the bed of Solomon has 60 mighty men around him from the mighty warriors of Israel, because he's afraid at night. And what's he afraid from? He's afraid of Gehenna, which is similar to night. And this refers to the Lishkas Agazis. This refers to the chamber where the judges were standing. And so we see from here that a judge always has to be very, very afraid that he's making the wrong decision. So, and when it says Giborim, it refers to the judges, and Rashi says the bed refers to the temple, where there's the Lishkas Agazis. So Rabbi Gamliel says, we had said in our Mishnah, Rabbi Gamliel said in Miyana that if she rejected that, what do we do? If she reject, in a case where the two brothers are married to two sisters, one's married to an adult, the other's married to a minor, that if the husband of the adult dies, and so she now falls to Yibum to the brother who's already married to the minor girl, Rabbi Eliezer had said we teach the minor girl to do Miyana. And Rabbi Gamliel says no. In Miyana, if she rejects the marriage, fine. Otherwise, we wait till she gets older. And then the second one goes out, even without chalitza. So Bamine Rabbi Lazar mi Rav, my time with Rabbi Gamliel. What's the reason why Rabbi Gamliel says it? That she can just wait till the minor girl grows older. Is it because Mishum de Kasavar Kedusha Katana Mitlotalu? Do we say the minor girl's betrothal is suspended v'chigadla, and when she becomes an adult, gadla ba'adei, it automatically takes effect when she gets older, afagav de lobo, even if they don't consummate it, automatically she becomes married at that point. Odoma mishum de kasavar mekadosh achos yevama, or maybe because he's of the position of Hamekadesh achos yevama niftara Yevama v'hochola, or maybe because he's of a different position, or maybe, or what's his position? His position is Mishum Nikasavar, because Rabbi Gamliel is of the position that Hamakadesh Achos Yevama, that if somebody betroths the sister of Yevama, even though he already has Yibum even though the older sister already felt a Yibum with him, nevertheless the kedushin with the other sister helps. And therefore, it uproots the zika. V'niftara yevama v'hochola, and the yevama is exempt, and she goes away. V'ibal in ilo balo, but that's only the case if he consummates the marriage with the woman he had kedushin, with the minor. But if he didn't do it, he wouldn't do it because she still has the zikuka with the Yevamos. So Amalei, how many times during the meal, Mishum the Kasavar, Machadesh Achos Yevama, Niftura Yevama Vahochola, Ibal in Ilabala. So the Gemara says we follow the latter approach, and it's because if you do a betrothal with the second wife, with a woman after, even though you have a zika with the first woman disappears, and so therefore he has to have bia with the younger one in this case when she gets older. Amar Sheshes Amina Kinayim v'Shachav Rav Amar Shmaita. So Rav Sheshes says, I say, and this is something that appears in the Shas in several places. He says, as an expression of respect, he says, I say that Rav must have said this while he was sleeping, because if he was awake, he wouldn't have said it. Titania Mekadesh Asakatana Kedusha Tuyin, because we have a brisa that says that if somebody betroths a minor girl, her betrothal is suspended. My Tuyin. What does it mean suspended? Lav ki gadla ba'ada afagav bal. Doesn't mean when she grows older with him, and the betrothal takes effect, even though he doesn't consummate at that marriage. So Amalei Ravina Breder of Nachman. So Ravina Breder of Nachman responds to Rav Sheshes. No, you could say that this price even works according to Rav. You could say that this price even works according to Rav. Why? And you could say that the price is not saying that the kedushin takes effect right away when she gets older, but rather it's saying it's suspended until he has bia with her, and the bia is what betroths it. Milsa de Katani. This is what the Bryce is saying. That kedushin that the sages established for the minor, that the mother or the brother is able to betroth her, the minor cannot rely upon it, but rather she can do miyun and mitla Talia v'kaima, and as long as she gets older, it's suspended. Ibalin ilobalo. It's only completely dependent upon the bia, and the reason is the amra who adif minai v'ana adifa minai, because the minor girl says that her husband's situation is better than me because he can do a divorce, but I'm also better than him because I just need to do miyun, and so therefore. We'll stop here, and Gemara is going to take up Rob's question in response. And we'll repeat this. We'll do this stuff again, and we'll do the next stuff at noon and also on Shabbos Kodesh. If anybody has any questions?
Good Shabbos, Rabbi.